Thanks for checking out this movie review video. This is for the 2017 film Cult of Chucky, and yes, that rounds out this Chucky 7 film set, but I'm not done here. I'm going to be reviewing also the Chucky remake, which will be after this one, the Saturday after this one. I don't own that one, thankfully, from what I've heard. I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard it's really bad, but I'm going to do a review on that, and then I'll have a review for Season 1 of The Chucky Show, and then Season 2 of The Chucky Show. So, wrapping this one up, excited to finally do that, and then I'm just going to rotate it into my collection back here. So, yeah. Anyway, written and directed by Don Mancini, who also directed Seed of Chucky, Curse of Chucky, and 2 episodes of the show, although he was involved throughout. Mancini has said that Andy is well off due to the life insurance money he collected from murders in past films. So just know that, because when you first see Andy in this, and I will say it was awesome to see Andy again, to see Alex Vincent reprising the role of Andy in this, and you catching up later on and seeing kind of what the trauma of Chucky has done to his life and how he's living these days. But he looks like he's living in a very nice place. So a lot of people would see that and be like, how do you get all this money? Like, what does he do? So that's the kind of out-of-film explanation that Mancini's given. Many cast members from Curse of Chucky ended up appearing in this film. Now, it's only 4 years between the 2 films. Although I will say, I'm going to say up front, and you'll see it reflected in my rating, I liked Curse of Chucky a little bit more than Cult of Chucky, and one of the main reasons being I don't like the pacing of Cult of Chucky very much. It's very slow and kind of boring for the very beginning of the film, but I will say that I'm not going to give it a terrible rating because it really does pick up towards the end and becomes very interesting, and they introduce a very cool concept. So there are some other things I don't like about the film that I'll point out, but other things I really do like, so let's continue. The 4 different Chuckies in this film that show up were given slightly different looks for shooting purposes, and they were nicknamed. These are the nicknames of the Chuckies: Buzzcut, Ragamuffin, Edwardian, and Evil Dead. That's kind of fun. And the other thing is, when they're doing this type of stuff in films, especially like that moment where the hand of the one Chucky, Dr. Foley, is like doing the fire on it, and it's like deforming. It's kind of like putting to a point his fingers. That serves the scene that it was in, but it also served to be able to differentiate which Chucky doll is which, since they introduced the idea of multiples into this film, which, by the way, was a concept that Mancini actually wanted to introduce in, I believe, Child's Play 3, but didn't have the time to and wasn't really allowed to because of budget constraints for that one. So he was finally able to pull it off for this one. So it is cool to know that he was able to finally bring that idea he had for some time to fruition. And I think it's a great concept. That's one of the things I like the most about this film, is that whole concept and kind of what it sets up as possibility within the franchise. Mancini has said that he has interest in doing a Freddy vs. Chucky movie because of how those 2 characters would end up playing off each other. Now, when I read that, I was like, yep, that sounds like a lot of fun. Please, somehow can we make this happen? Although it might be hard, because I'd assume you would have to get a new Freddy Krueger. It would not be able to be Robert Englund, because I just don't think he's doing the role anymore. I think maybe he's too old for it. Now, Brad Dourif, he can just keep doing Chucky because he doesn't have to physically act. It's all voice. So good for him. All right, getting into the film. Like I said, great to see that Alex Vincent is back as Andy. Love that they start with that, and they just kind of show that his life is a little bit in shambles. He's trying to date, but everyone Googles him, which, honestly, it's a good thing to Google people if you're going to do that. Just know if they're, killers or not. And some really messed up stuff comes up for him, so it's really impacting his life. Andy is armed to the teeth. That's one of the other things you see. You're like, wow, is he just paranoid at this point? But, having been an audience member, watching all the films, you're kind of like, yeah, I kind of understand it, because Chucky, like Chucky could be anywhere at any time. And then once they introduce this concept of multiple Chuckies, which Andy then becomes aware of, it makes you think even more that there really should be protection, a lot of protection for someone like Andy. The reveal of the mutilated Chucky head in the safe at Andy's place is really cool idea. Love that idea, but it's also really sick and twisted, and it kind of shows you mentally where Andy is at the beginning of this film. Like, at this point in his life, he's so alone that he only has Chucky, who he hates so much. So what is he going to do? He actually talks to Chucky and kind of at times treats him slightly like a friend, but then he's also taking out his frustrations of what Chucky's done to him by doing very messed up, sick things to his head. So it's a really cool idea, and I think it gives you a lot of insight into what's going on with Andy. Solid idea for the opening credits montage to get people caught up on previous events of the franchise. I like that. Instead of like actually going over a bunch of stuff throughout the film or in the very beginning of the film, it's just kind of like a quick, like, while we're showing you the opening credits, here you go. So I like that they did that, bit of a time saver. Nika being convinced that Chucky was not real sets her up to be fully unguarded when Chucky eventually does show up. Although because of the trauma she has, she kind of starts to revert back, and she does become a bit more guarded once, Chucky gets introduced by Dr. Foley. Excuse me. The mental health facility to which Nika is taken is very secluded, plus there's snow everywhere, making it hard for anyone to escape except by car. That's another thing. Just any time in film just showing extreme seclusion and then there's like a killer there, it just ups the dread, it ups the danger within the situation, and then even further, the fact that, Nika lives in like a locked room. She doesn't have free reign to kind of go wherever she wants. She's being monitored a lot. And then the other thing is, people at this facility who work there are not going to believe the people in the facility who are in locked rooms that there is a killer doll on the loose. So even when the danger shows up, there are so many people who control things there who are not going to believe that there actually is danger. So that makes it even more dangerous of a situation. In addition to, you can't really escape because you need a car, and no one there has a car, except the people who work there. But anyway. The relationship between Nika and Malcolm goes from 0 to 60 first thing, and it's very ridiculous. Also, I don't understand because they don't maintain any sort of romantic relationship, so I don't really understand the reason for they meet and then they immediately have sex. I don't get it. I mean, maybe it's just kind of like if people don't have sex for a while, just they have these urges and they need to get them out. But I don't understand why it need to be in the film. It doesn't add anything. It's kind of for nothing, especially because then afterwards, Nika and Malcolm are kind of friendly. I don't know. I don't like that. The introduction of a Chucky doll is believable within this scenario of the film. Dr. Foley bringing it in so, Nika can kind of face her fears, face her trauma. And of course, Tiffany is Nika's first visitor at this facility. And it's interesting that she was Alice's guardian because they basically allude to the fact that, well, don't allude. Tiffany says that she died. Not sure if I trust her about Alice being dead, though. That's the thing, because obviously Tiffany's not a reliable individual. So her saying that she was dead may have just been a way to get Nika riled up. So we don't know, because we didn't see Alice get killed. You could assume that she did based off of what was going on at the very end of Curse of Chucky, but I wouldn't make assumptions with any horror films. Until you see someone die on screen, it's not assured that they're actually dead. The interaction Chucky has with Angela is funny because he's confused as to what's going on, because she's kind of treating like, don't be afraid of me, I won't hurt you, and he's like, lady. And he like literally goes over, he's like, I'm an old doll from the 80s who's talking, standing, walking, and holding a scalpel. It's just a funny scene. It's a little bit meta for the film too, based off what Chucky says to her, and I like that. It's a good twist that Chucky won't let Nika kill herself, because she does try to kill herself, obviously. And that shows that either he needs the satisfaction of killing her, or he has other plans for her. Now, by the end of the film, you find out, obviously, that he has other plans for her because he breaks off another piece of his soul and puts it inside Nika, which I'm going to tell you right now, I don't like. I think that's kind of dumb, especially coming off Seed of Chucky, where he actually embraces being a doll and saying, like, actually, I'm really enjoying this, and there's a lot of great advantages to just being a doll, and then he's obviously, like, splitting his soul further into more dolls, so it's like, why is he now going back to wanting to inhabit a body of a human too? I don't know. I don't know. Especially inhabiting the body of a human who is very high profile because a lot of people believe she killed a bunch of people. So, like, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. If anything, he would probably be wanting to inhabit the body of someone like Carlos or Dr. Foley or anyone else who's not looked at as criminally insane. I'm just saying. Already talked about that. Interesting scene that leads to Malcolm being inhabited by Chucky's soul, you think. It is kind of an interesting scene because at first you're just kind of like, what's going on? You know, Madeline's out there. She throws the Chucky in the open grave. And then, why is there an open grave there, by the way? And then Malcolm comes by. She kind of like is pointing. It's kind of like, oh, I dropped him in. Can you get him? And then you're just like, oh, this is a ruse so that he'll get in and then Chucky will kill him. No, then you see the Chucky doll being lifted up by Malcolm, and then he gives this look to Nika, and you're kind of like, oh my gosh. Now he's split off his soul into Malcolm, but that's not actually the case. You find out in the end, he does start to say he's Charles Lee Ray, but that's because, as was set up earlier, he has multiple personalities. So it's this confusion thing. There's a whole thing about him being a poser that Chucky says at the end of the film. All that stuff. Real quick, got to pause for hydration. The broken skylight scene, cool scene, really like it, especially the decapitation. It has a solid amount of gore and viscera to it, and it has good impact. Do love that scene. That's probably a scene that a lot of people think of when they talk about Cult of Chucky. Really cool. The fact that Dr. Foley is still alive after his Chucky encounter does make you wonder if stuff going on is in Nika's head, because obviously this is from her perspective. So at that point, you start to be like, I don't know. Is she a reliable narrator in this situation? So they do a decent enough job to make you think, maybe, maybe not. But having seen all of the rest of the franchise, you would probably assume, yeah, there's actual Chucky stuff going on, because I don't think they would make it all in someone's head in this franchise. Although if someone's just watching this film and hasn't seen any other Chucky films, I could see where they would definitely be like, I don't know, maybe this is all in her head. Glad it wasn't. The scene of Madeline smothering Chucky seems like it isn't needed, and it definitely goes on longer than it should. I do feel like there's kind of an okay amount of, a decent amount of scenes within this film, especially early on in it, that just don't need to be there. They don't add a whole lot. It seems like they're just kind of added in there to stretch the runtime to a degree. And that's part of the issue with the pacing of the film, which is my biggest problem with the film. It doesn't have great pacing, really. Andy is a badass. He's willing to commit himself in order to save people from Chucky. People he doesn't even know from Chucky. So I like this kind of, look at Andy, he's a badass, he's a big-time hero. And then obviously the stuff that happens at the end, which I'll talk about in a minute, because I'm kind of going through it like events-wise, but the scene of Chucky putting his hand into Madeline's mouth is weird. A, that's not a very good death scene, especially the way they shot it. B, it's just weird how he's just like touching her mouth, and then she's just like going along with this, like, and then he starts putting it in her mouth and she's still going along with it. It's just a weird scene. I don't think it plays well. I don't think we needed it. I think they could have come up with a much better death for her. And also, if he's gonna yank her tongue out like that, show it straight on, because, I watched the unrated version, just so you know, because if you have this, why would you not watch the unrated version? And it just doesn't look as good as some of the other kills. Like, they just needed to go bigger on that one. Although maybe it's budget constraints that kept that from happening. I don't know. Not sure you really need Dr. Foley being a creep in this. I don't really know what that added. I don't think it added a whole lot. Maybe it just kind of like made it more like oh, there's more crappy people around, there's less people that Nika can actually rely upon, because you kind of get the idea with the way the character's introduced and set up that Carlos, the orderly, is really the only person who's like really nice to Nika and she could actually rely on. And then obviously he dies, but I just don't get the reason to like make Dr. Foley a creepy villain. Like, it didn't really do much. I think it's just seems like this kind of like side plot that just doesn't turn into a whole lot, honestly. When all three Chuckies get together and are interacting, you see great potential in that concept. That's one of my favorite scenes of the film, honestly, is when all the Chuckies start like talking to each other. Because one Chucky talking is a lot of fun. 3 Chuckies talking and having a conversation with each other is just like 3 times the fun, pretty much. Like, you would assume that, and then when you see it in practice, you're like, oh yeah, that's great. So, love that scene. You know that Carlos was going to end up dying at some point, and he dies a pretty good gory death, getting continuously stabbed and messed up by the 3 Chuckies. I did like that death scene. There are some lame deaths in this film, but there's some really good ones too. Like Carlos's is good, Claire's is good. Who else is good? Dr. Foley's death is also good and gruesome. When it's, well, Nika, who's now possessed by Chucky, goes over and she just like stomps the crap out of his head. Like, really gross, really disturbing, really bloody. Looks like, that's another great one. And then Malcolm's death, too. When Malcolm finally gets it, the drill through the back of the head coming out the eye, like the amount of blood, how like cringing, how much you would cringe at like how much that would hurt. And for people who have problems with eyeball stuff, like that eyeball coming out, and yeah, well done, liked it. There's some good, really good practical effects in this, some really good death scenes in it, but it doesn't save the film overall. Smart move by Andy to hide the gun in the Chucky, because he figured what would happen. As soon as he becomes aware that there can be multiple Chuckies, he sends that, buzz cut Chucky to the facility. And I was kind of like, why is he sending it? And then at the end, you figure out that, he knew that the Chucky who was going to be there, at least one of them, would then put its soul into that new Chucky doll, and it would come after him, and then he would be ready because he had put a gun inside of it. But then, wouldn't it be aware of that? Like, as soon as the soul goes into the buzzcut Chucky, wouldn't it be aware that there's, like, something inside its stomach? Because you get the idea that when the doll is inhabited by the soul of Chucky, that it feels, like, and it is very human-like. So, I don't know. I feel like it would have known. But it is still a cool scene, and it's a cool concept. Not really a fan of the whole Nika and Tiffany thing. Not a fan of Nika being possessed by Chucky. I just don't like it. I already talked about it. He, came to terms with being a doll and seed of Chucky, and I thought that was cool. I thought that should have continued. I just don't... I'm going to be honest, I don't like the character of Nika past Curse of Chucky. I like her in Curse of Chucky, but past Curse of Chucky, there's too much terrible stuff that happens to her. It feels like she has pretty much no fight in her, and it just starts to become very overboard, in my opinion. And I don't know, I don't like it. It's nothing having to do with Fiona Dorff's performance as Nika, because she does an amazing job, she really does. It's just, I don't like how the character's written and what goes on with the character. Just not a fan. You do get the idea in the end of the film that Tiffany is doing what Chucky is doing, which is splitting her soul up and putting it in other dolls, because you see at the very end the Tiffany doll that is laughing in the back. So that's cool. I like that kind of like stinger at the end to a degree. That's nice. Again, pacing's not so great in this. It does really pick up towards the end, but that doesn't save the whole film. Some of the deaths, lame, but most of them good. The color palette is very black, white, and gray, which I kind of think was intentionally done to reflect kind of the hopeless, depressed mental state of Nika within the film. I may be wrong on that, but that's kind of what I see in it, and I think it works that way. It really, really does. Although I will say also that visually it makes the film a little less interesting and striking by having it that color palette. Just saying. The setting of the film is perfect for having nobody in charge believe that Chucky's real, so the killing can just go on unimpeded. So, smart idea for scenario, situation, and location by Don Mancini. Past Curse of Chucky, I don't like the character of Nico. Like I was saying, I just can't reiterate that too much. I don't like that character. So, overall, don't hate the film. There are obviously some things I really liked about it. There's some problems too, but out of 5 stars with half stars in play, I'm going to give it a decent enough, middle of the road 2.5 stars. I still like it more than Child's Play 3. If you're keeping track, Child's Play 3 is the lowest for me at this point, which may surprise some people. I don't know, but other people probably not. Would love to hear your thoughts on Cult of Chucky. Go ahead and put it in the comments. Love it, hate it, in between. Give me like a sentence or two telling me why. If you just say like, I like it, I don't like it, that doesn't really mean much to me, honestly. But I appreciate everyone watching. Do me a favor, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I would greatly appreciate that. Also hit the notification bell button, because then you know when I'm putting up new videos. Join this community. Join this nerdy horror community I'm putting together here. I would greatly appreciate it. But regardless, thank you for checking out this. Thank you for checking out I'm assuming, checking out all my Chucky reviews and all the ones to come, because this has been fun. It's been a lot of fun. So thanks, everyone, and until next time, keep it brutal.